everyone, welcome back to Shonky Lab. I'm Elton, and this is the show where we pick a topic and talk about it. And this week I'm joined by Mr. Lee Harvey.
Hello.
And Mr. Jim Moon.
Hello, folks.
And we've got conspiracies on the table today. Lots and lots of conspiracies. I've also got a side topic as well. I don't know if the people in the chat want to play along with this. Who would play you in a film? Just going to put that out there for now. I'm wondering if they'll actually join in with that or not. I don't know. I reckon I'd end up with Danny Dyer or someone like that playing me. I'd want Leo. I'd end up with Danny. That's the way I feel that things would go for me, which is I'd take him. I don't mind Danny Dyer. I've got no problems with him. I know a lot of people fucking hate him, but there we go. So, how are you, gentlemen? Anyway,
I'm good.
Good. Been up to much?
Getting slightly nervous after doing research for this show.
Is that due to all the websites you've been going on?
It's due to what we've been reading on the websites.
Oh, God.
So that after a while, you start delving into this stuff. You start going, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah, it does get a little bit like that. I was watching certain things, which I won't speak about just now, but I was watching certain videos on YouTube, because YouTube is your friend in this subject, I feel. And some of the moments I caught myself going, what if? Hang on a minute. And then I had to shake myself and go, no, it's nothing to do with me. No, I don't want to go down there. So
You don't want to follow that rabbit down that hole.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, incidentally, Jim, I was listening to your Day of the Triffids episode today, and bravo, that I'm hooked on that already. I love that, so I'm looking forward to more of that coming out.
Yeah, so another bit this weekend, and then one the weekend after next. There's a bit of a break for a story due to my schedule getting mucked up by people inconsiderately dying. But then there'll be a fourth one as well, because I'm just reading the sequel novel at the minute, Night of the Triffids.
Oh, nice. So we got
So
a nice
there will
collection.
Yes, it should have been a three-parter because Triffids have three legs, but it turned into four. But you know,
This isn't like your Batman two-parter, is it?
It got a bit. I expected this would be several parters to covering the movie and 2D TV series and a sequel. But so I wanted it for three, but it got to four because I talked so much about the original novel.
You need to have a separate podcast which is just entirely devoted to people who have died recently.
Well, that will be
Because
the
then
obituary show.
Yeah, then it won't mess up your schedule.
Yeah, nice. And what about you, Lee? What have you been up to? You been up to much?
I'm good. I'm all right. Yeah. Just working, and recently got back into playing war games for the first time for a while, so that was nice. Playing the new Warhammer 40,000 that just came out recently.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure some of our listeners will know about. And as I've done no research for this show whatsoever, I'm not worried in the slightest. Ignorance is bliss, yeah.
Yeah, ignorance can be bliss. I pulled a Mega Drive down from my loft this week, and I was showing my daughter Sonic 2 on that. And do you know what? She loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was nice and friendly and fun and colourful, and she really liked it. She hasn't really been back on it since, but she enjoyed them 20 minutes that she was actually playing it. But then I sat down today to play it. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give it a whirl. It's bloody hard. It's miles harder than what I remember it being. It was, I don't remember it being like that whatsoever. So,
back in day when games were proper games, not like they are now.
Yeah. Proper hard games as well. So, yeah.
No saves as well.
You only had 3 lives and that were it.
Yeah, no saves, 3 lives. That's it. Once you're dead, back to the beginning. I was trying to do cheat codes on it as well, and it wasn't working. I was trying to do the up, down, down, and it wasn't having it. So, no, not one bit, you bastard. Anyway, I think we should dive into some conspiracies at least. I have just to mention, I have a can of beer celebrating the 100th episode of Shonky Lab. So I'm going to give myself a little round of applause there for reaching 100.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. It's taken far too long to get to this point, but yeah, them's the breaks, I'm sure. I think I had about a year off at one point as well. So
it's quality, not quantity.
Yeah, that's right. Screw them losers that say quantity.
Yeah. Not like some other podcasts.
Are you pointing a finger?
We'll just do a couple of episodes about Batman and then we'll move on. Yeah.
I'm still waiting for more Judge Dredd, but I'm not gonna moan. So conspiracies.
Yes.
I'm sure we all like a conspiracy, don't we?
I'm not as fond of them as I used to be, I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But before we touch on that, that's the way conspiracy theories have changed, particularly in the last few years.
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's the norm now. It's like that's the place to go first. It used to be that it was just, a handful of weirdos. But now with the way that you can communicate so easily, it's almost as if everything is a conspiracy first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. It's also the way it's kind of in certain political circles, mainly the right in America, conspiracy theories are now the norm.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, it happens over here with the British tabloid press, of that they're always touting scare stories that are now verging on conspiracy theories.
Yeah, everything has an underlying tone to it, though, doesn't it?
Mm.
Everything. It doesn't matter who died, what died, how something got destroyed, someone ripped off someone was photographing someone else. It's all conspiracy theories, right down to the flowers. And it doesn't matter what type of life you have, where you get this thought from. There's always someone on the internet turning it around and saying, yeah, what about this? What about that? Which can be quite fun in most instances. If it's harmless, I feel there's no problems with that whatsoever. But some of it can get fucking really crazy to the point. I'll give you one, for example. We don't have to hit on this now, but the flat earth theory.
Hey, that's one of my favorite ones.
Oh, is it?
Because I work in a department whose job it is to map the height of the UK. We produce height models. And it's really hard. So we're trying desperately to get our managers to sign up to the Flat Earth Society so that we can just turn around and say, it's all flat.
Yeah, I think in the flat earth theory, there are still mountains.
Oh, boo.
From what I can work out, the Earth is a disc, and around the edge of the disc are mountains and frozen, like ice mountains, stopping everything from falling off the edge. A bit like when you have a Yorkshire pie and all the food goes in the middle. And the Earth and all the people and the water around there, they are the food that goes in the middle, and the mountains are the crust of the Yorkshire pie that goes around the edge. I don't know if I believe it or not. It's one of them things where you can.
Wait. Hang on, are you saying you don't know if you believe whether the Earth is flat or not? That's what it sounded like you just said.
Well, I can play devil's advocate. Okay, fine. No, I think I totally believe in that. Go on, prove me wrong.
Okay, Elton, the Earth is not flat.
Oh, well, you have certainly proved me wrong. Thank you very much.
Well, just viewing it from space for a start. Assuming, of course, we have actually been to space, but I'm sure we'll get onto that one later.
Yeah, that's it gets like Russian dolls of conspiracy
does,
theories.
Yeah.
So, what are some of your favourite conspiracies that you guys have, Jim?
I quite like the Paul is dead conspiracy theory. This is from the old nation. Conspiracy theories used to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the Paul is dead?
This is
No.
Paul McCartney, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
According to the theory, Paul McCartney actually died in a car crash in 1966, and it was covered up by the other Beatles, hiring someone who looked exactly like him, sang like him, and had the same personality. But they kept dropping hints. For example, in the song Taxman, there's a line, some advice for those who die, meaning Paul. On Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, they have a big band intro and introduced a new member, Billy Shears, which is allegedly the name of the Paul McCartney-alike they hired. The cover of Abbey Road is symbolic. Lennon is in white as the preacher. Ringo is the mourner in black. George is wearing jeans as he's the grave digger. And Paul is wearing shoes because he's dead. He don't need no shoes, and he's walking out of step with the others. At the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, you can hear John say, Paul is dead, I miss him, I miss him. Oh, no, sorry, that's the backward message at the end of Sgt. Pepper's. At the end of Strawberry Fields, you can hear Lennon saying, I buried Paul, although Lennon claimed the phrase was actually cranberry sauce. And there's all sorts of things, like if you put the Sgt. Pepper album cover up in a mirror, you can see cryptic messages, and Paul's pose relates to something in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, symbolizing
Surely that's one of the easy things to check. That's for the mirror. Was nobody checked that?
Nobody has
Literally
gatefolds
everyone in the world
anymore.
was thinking, oh, someone else is probably right. I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, nobody has gatefolds anymore, though, do they? It's all down to CDs, and they're microscopic compared to what they used to have.
Exactly. You see.
So what you're saying is they're covering it up. You know, them.
Yes, the establishment.
Yeah. Oh, that's them. Establishment.
I like this conspiracy. Like you say, it is a fun one to have.
And it's unusual because usually the conspiracies are somebody's not dead, like Elvis or Adolf Hitler or anyone, any big famous person. So for them to have to say that they actually are dead, it's very unusual.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, I choose to believe it. True, Jim.
There is another two things. One on Sgt. Pepper's album. It looks like Paul McCartney's bass has been buried. I think it's surrounded by flowers at the very bottom of the album. And on the Abbey Road cover, Paul is he's holding a cigarette in his right hand, where he was a lefty. So, as far as I'm concerned, yes, Paul died many, many years ago.
It's all there, man.
But yeah, there was a lot of acid taken during this time as well. I'm sure of it, especially by some of the fans out there that want to. I don't know. Do they want to believe that Paul died and the conspiracy is there?
I don't know. It's just a weird one for people to want to believe. I mean, I understand why people want to believe Elvis faked his own death, why Jim Morrison faked his own death. I mean. You can understand that these people died young and people wanted more for them. And they have to think they're maybe still out there enjoying a quiet life. But what it says about Paul McCartney, the people wish he was dead, I don't know. But I mean, I think conspiracies grow over time as well, and it's kind of maybe the Frog Chorus and Give My Regards to Broad Street have compounded this theory. I don't know. It'd be interesting to chart it on some sort of a chart.
I would love to see Give My Regards to Broad Street. I've heard that is a terrible film.
I can get you a copy.
Oh, yes, please.
I've never seen it all. But I'm going to watch it, actually. It's the Excellence TV Cream, who are celebrating their 20 years of being around online. Have just released a commentary for it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to watch it, and I'll pretty much fall he's dead by the end of that as well. But there you go.
Yeah, I've heard about the ending as well, which I shan't give away because that would just spoil it for everyone. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I've heard about the ending, and I want to watch it because of that, shall we say?
Just jump straight to the end. Just watch the last bit.
I know the ending. That's the problem. I want to see.
Right, okay.
I want to see what they do before the end, and see if it suits it or not. But yeah, I suppose people are normally they want to. The general public want to keep their rock stars, their film stars, all the other stars that they idolize. They want to keep them alive, don't they?
Clearly not.
Well, in the case of Elvis,
as recent history has shown, the British people are nuts.
Yeah.
So clearly, they want Paul McCartney dead for some reason.
I think Skype's gone wonky. Nuts. Just for the chat room and just for my peace of mind as well. Oh, flipping up. My kids are draining my internet with their HD quality films on their iPads and small devices, and also the PlayStation as well. And, yeah. So me trying to stream this and record this as well, it's having quite the impact on everything that I'm doing. So I live in the sticks. We don't have mega uber fiber optic internet out here. We just have copper wire and a bloke down there just with a turning wheel trying to get things going, and 50p.
You need to put more hamsters on it. Hamsters on the wheel.
I would love to have more hamsters.
More cowbell.
Yeah, so sorry about that. We should be all right now, so fingers crossed. Martin, I have sent them to bed. They are in their bed. That's where they are streaming their bloody movies from. The problem is I had a 14-year-old 14 years ago, and now he has a PlayStation in his room, and he's playing games and talking to his mate on it. And my daughter is screaming.
Is that your PlayStation that wasn't going to go upstairs?
That's the one, yeah. That was the one that you can have it upstairs for a week, and then it comes back down. Oh, yeah, okay. And it came down for a day, and then went straight back up. And then they wonder why I blow my top all the time. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so we should be back in the room. So, where were we? We was on Paul McCartney, weren't we? And Elvis and such likes.
Elvis isn't dead, but Paul McCartney is dead.
Are you a believer of the Elvis?
That's what we established. What, that he's not dead?
Yeah. How old would he be now if he hadn't or didn't die? How old is he then?
Elvis is eternal, baby.
Because he's got to be getting near the point where he's going to be popping off this coil, really, isn't he?
I think Mr. Martin Thompson had the answer to this. He said Elvis would have been 82 this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice mathematics. Damn, I missed it. Oh, that was that was when I was sorting out stuff upstairs. Flipping out. Thank goodness for the chat room.
One of my favourite conspiracies is anything that comes out of the mouth of David Icke.
Well, that's pretty much all of them.
Yeah. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But particularly the reptiles.
Also, what's it? Is the greatest secret ever told? Is that the? I read
Something
one of
like
his
that.
books. Had out the library, and I was just rolling around on the floor while I was reading it, because it was kind of every conspiracy I'd ever heard of, all woven together into one huge tapestry of madness. And the bit that always sticks in my mind is when he's talking about the reptoids, and he says, people ask me, what are they? Are they A, aliens? Are they B, from another dimension? Are they C, time travelers? Or are they D, astral vampires? The answer is a bit of all of them. It's like, bang, nailed it.
Well, thank you very much, David.
So what is it? These reptilians, shape-shifting reptilians, live underground and are plotting against us all. Those of us which they have not replaced.
I
So
thought
the
they
royal
were.
family apparently are lizards.
Yeah, I thought they were in key positions of power across the world, across the flat Earth.
Well, Nigel Farage, if somebody said he was a lizard, that, if anything, backs up David Icke's case.
He's not in a position of power, is he? He's just a fool that
Well,
I
got
don't
people
know.
to listen.
It's caused a lot of havoc.
yeah,
Of,
he's done a lot for someone who's not in a position of any power.
Yeah.
But, I mean, things. But my take on the like reptiles thing is kind of, I can see there is a sort of weird and unintentional, I would say, kind of symbolic truth to it. Because, like, the human brain is made up in like layers, and there's the primitive reptile brain, and that's where all the violent and antisocial instincts come from. It's kind of, if you think there's, people who go through family connections and money, quite demonstrably have been gaming the system for years, and they act on the lowest possible principles, symbolically they are acting on reptilian impulses. So that's as far as the censors I could go with Ike.
So you're saying that he's just taking it really literally?
Well, kind of. I mean, but I think conspiracy theories, they are kind of, they're interesting because they reflect people's sort of fears and concerns, and the more wacky they get, the more it's kind of, you can kind of apply some psychology to them and see, the underlying kind of mechanisms that are driving the belief and driving the appeal, indeed, of why people like conspiracy theories. I mean, people want to believe we're being oppressed by alien reptiles because culturally we've had 50, 60, well, even more years of science fiction films about aliens coming and doing just that. And, we all want to be in Star Wars. We all want to be in the rebellion and fight the evil alien empire, don't we?
I think in David Icke's case, it's a lack of underlying mechanisms that's caused the spread of this.
I mean, I see him as a guy, he had a complete breakdown, and he's a kind of a proof of something like G.K. Chesterton said. He said, the problem is when people stop believing God, they don't just believe in nothing. They literally start believing in everything. And kind of Ike is kind of, he had some sort of breakdown, and then he's kind of literally everything he's read must be true. And he started fitting it together.
Didn't he think that he was Jesus?
Well, he's kind of, he did, but he's kind of, that was in his,
for all I know.
Well, that was in the early stages, though, where he had this sort of cosmic enlightenment. And in fairness, he was sort of misquoted, because he was saying, we all actually are divine beings and we need to wake up.
Right.
And then that built on from that to kind of, well, actually, people aren't waking up and being enlightened. That's because we're being held back. Why are being held back? And that's because there's the conspiracy and there's this dark stuff going on and there's aliens and blah, 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 ley lines, Atlantis. Rah, rah, rah. You completely went down the rabbit hole.
Wasn't it the Son of God? He didn't say he was Jesus. He was the Son of God. And I think it was,
Right.
as you said, misinterpreted because we are all the Son of God.
Right.
Yeah, that was his kind of point. But I remember that Wogan appearance. I mean, he didn't help his cause by explaining it terribly well, to be honest. And the thing about purple shell suits because they give off better positive vibrations. No, shell suits don't give any vibrations. They don't make you look good or groovy or enlightened, really.
Well, is it about conspiracies that some people like them because you can't prove them, and so if they come up with a conspiracy, it's up to you to prove them wrong, and they know that you can't prove them wrong?
I don't know if that would be a reason for them to actually, to believe in them so much. Maybe to make it easier to believe in something, because it's so hard to prove it wrong. But I don't know if you're going to go out of your way for that specific reason.
I don't know. I think it was Ollie put something on the Facebook group about some recent study of where a psychologist did surveys and they reckoned people like conspiracies because they like that knowing things other people don't.
Yeah, definitely. They like to tell somebody they're wrong.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think I had problems with that thing because surveys can be horribly skewed depending on how you answer questions, and how you put the questions up. It's like would you like Vince Cable to be Prime Minister, or would you like this cat raping monster? And everyone go, Vince Cable, actually. I mean, I think I'm not sure this is an urban myth, but the famous 8 out of cats prefer.
Yeah,
I think the truth was that the cats had a choice of the cat food or broken glass or nails. So 8 of them had the cat food. The other 2 just didn't have anything to do with it. Cost their cats. But I think kind of there is part of that having secret knowledge. People definitely do get off on that. But I think with conspiracy theories, I think a lot of it's kind of weirdly, I think, is driven by kind of like a hyper skepticism.
Yeah.
Of once you start questioning things, but then you can't stop, and then you won't accept evidence of anything, and then you end up, you can just pick something because everything's equally unprovable by that point. You know what I mean? It's kind of like with the famous moon landings. There's pictures of the Earth faked. All these people worked at NASA. Well, they would say that. You know what I mean? You kind of skepticism. People should be open-minded. Things should be questioned. But when you gets to a point of where you deny everything and you won't accept anything as evidence at all, it can just snowball out into this weird territory and people end up making some very bizarre assertions.
I mean, which ones do you think are out there which are more believable then, amongst all the crazy?
Well, it's one of those. I mean, I find the thing with conspiracy theories is I think there's a fine line between things of kind of what actually turns out to be history and what is a conspiracy theory. I mean, to go back to David Icke, he brought up stories of Jimmy Savile being part of a paedophile ring, and we all laughed. But that bit turned out to be true.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's kind of, I find kind of a blanket dismissal of conspiracy theories maybe isn't always helpful. Because, I mean, when researching for this, I mean, I did look and I found all kinds of crazy things that people thought were conspiracy theories that actually turned out to be true.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of, that's where it all gets a bit weird. I mean, an obvious example is, in the 60s, all the hippies and the Black Panthers and all the radical groups were claiming they were being infiltrated by the CIA and the FBI. And everyone said, yes, you've had too much acid. Truth is, documents released. Yes, they were infiltrated. They were monitored. They were fed disinformation. They did have agents provocateurs, based in their ranks to derail what they were doing. So, it's kind of, there is, just kind of there's an awful lot of things about government shady tactics that I found actually have come out and been later discovered years later with freedom of information requests and declassified documents of actually they were covering up, they were messing with people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, every time something like this comes out, it obviously just feeds all the others.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's fanning the flames of the new conspiracies that are coming out, isn't it? It's, well, they covered it up there, so why couldn't they cover up this new one that's come out?
Mm.
And yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes. Just jump into the chat very, very quickly. I did ask at the very top of the show, who would you like to play you in a film? And we did have, I don't know if we had any others, but we definitely had Lee Metcalf mention he would like Jeffrey Dean Morgan from The Walking Dead and The Watchmen. Who did he play in The Watchmen? It was the Joker, not the Joker, the comedian. That was it. But he'd probably end up with Tim Curry from either Loaded Weapon or the Pennywise the Clown era. But yeah. Okay, so yeah, sorry, I just wanted to jump in on that. Yeah, the conspiracy, I feel that they do fan the flames, i.e., as you said, that where stuff has been declassified and brought out into the public, it does give someone to point the finger at and say, look, it was covered up there, so why shouldn't they cover up aliens, for example, in this sector? It doesn't help that certain information is covered up.
Well, I mean, speaking of aliens, there's the famous one is in the Area 51 and the Roswell UFO crash, and there being live bodies, live aliens taken back to that base. But then a lot of things were genuinely being tested, a lot of weaponry, spy planes, all sorts of things. So one of the theories is that actually all of that UFO stuff was created deliberately and pushed deliberately as a smokescreen to what they were actually doing.
Well, it is. I mean, sorry, go on.
No, that's fine.
I mean, I read a very good book called On the Trail of the Saucer Spies. A chap called Nick Redfern, and he did a lot of research and uncovered a lot of very interesting stuff, which actually, from declassified documents, freedom of information stuff, that actually, British intelligence, US intelligence, and Russian intelligence all actually infiltrated UFO groups and UFO research groups. For the very good reason is that when there are strange lights in the sky, it is obvious it is them testing things. Now, a famous example is in the 80s, in the northwest of England, there was a spate of reports of black triangular UFOs. Government denied all knowledge. It was rubbish. These people were morons. Haha, aliens, little green men from Mars. Fuck off, you Anorak losers.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 1990. What's all over the news? The big new toy the military are trying out in the Gulf, the stealth bomber, big black triangle. And hence, this is why in this book he said, because one side had infiltrated the groups, all the others had to as well, even allies and enemies.
Yeah.
And they were spreading disinformation. And, he says the whole Area 51 stuff, the famous Majestic memos, pretty much certainly came from the intelligence community with the goal of directing attention away from other areas that was hotbeds of UFO activity. And I can find that quite believable. I mean, I've been out to the Nevada desert and driven through Death Valley. And if you look on the map, you see all these big open spaces. You drive through it, you see big compounds, literally, full of tanks parked up that aren't marked on the map. So it's kind of, they chose Area 51, I think, because it was so obviously an easily discoverable secret place.
Yeah.
You just have to look on a map, you have to drive there, and you can find X number of military and Air Force compounds. And that's just enough to get, for the idea to take root. This Area 51, everyone's going there to transport the sources and not watching other places where they're doing other things. Redfern actually made himself very unpopular because his take on the Roswell crash is that there was a cover-up, and they were testing balloons and testing the effect of altitude on people, and they were hookily using prisoners of war.
So that's what they think that was found there.
Yeah, and that's what the bodies were.
Yeah.
Bloody hell! What's sending them up in balloons?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Mm.
Well, they fly monkeys into space.
Yeah. But it's I think it's very interesting because sometimes some conspiracies are just complete nonsense, but others you kind of find actually there is something to them, and this is why often they do take hold. There's some of the more tenacious ones. I think there are this not I wouldn't say a nugget of truth, but there's something real there for it to sort of coalesce around, sort of like the grit that forms forms a pearl in an oyster.
Yeah, because we have had, secret societies do exist. They have always existed. I mean, the Masons is probably the most famous one.
Well, this is it. The Illuminati were a real group originally.
Were they not formed actually to further human knowledge and actually as a good thing, the Illuminati?
Well, originally, yes. I mean, I read a very good book by a historian that traced the history of secret societies, and you'd be surprised how many of the kind of right-on and groovy ideals we have now of freedom of knowledge, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, one man, a vote for everybody, democracy. These were originally advanced by secret societies in like the 17th and 18th centuries. Because before the Illuminati, there was the Rosicrucians, who were this ultimate secret society that were largely seem to have been invented to inspire people to put out these two manifestos, which inspired a lot of early philosophers and scientists who formed what they call the Invisible College, which is kind of the forerunner of what we now call the Royal Society. And it was kind of, an international network of thinkers and scientists and experimenters who, were looking to improve the lot of humanity. I mean, the Rosicrucians, according to the legend in the pamphlets, there was a group of 8 of them all at one time, and they're all doctors. And one of their key oaths was they had to treat any sick person they met and not take any payment. It's just, it's very, and it is very interesting how, I think, people will always form little groups and cliques, and there are probably more conspiracies out there than we actually realize, although most of them are probably quite small and petty things, to nobble the toilet paper market or, you know what I mean? Things like that.
Might be the referees that get sent to Millwall. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Once
the Football Association bastards.
Once the cliques are formed, then you have the people that want to be in there or have been rejected from them groups as well, which also fan the flames of the discussion that what are they doing? What's going on? Why wasn't I let in? Oh, well, they're doing this and they're doing that, and it's all underhanded. Yeah, I wouldn't join anything that was underhanded. And so that helps the mystery ponder on, I suppose. Martin Thompson in the chat room mentioned the stonecutters. And then Andy also mentioned the no-homers. Which I'd totally forgotten about.
What is it? You let in Homer, whatever it is. Oh, it's the No Homers Club.
Yeah. That's it.
But yeah, that's one of the other ones. Remembering the stonecutters, they say about holding back the electric car, don't they? That's something I always thought is quite. I could believe that the companies, the oil companies and the car companies have been holding that technology back because they're making so much money from how things are.
Is that from the massive oil companies though?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
Because they want us to spend our fine money on their oils, where they've got the technology for the electric car sat in a warehouse somewhere, and they're not going to bring it out until they can make all the money off of us, and then they'll bring it out at a high price.
I think so, because it's starting to appear now, isn't it? It's starting to come through.
Yeah.
Just as the global warming thing starts to get a bit more embedded around the world, particularly in places where it previously hasn't done.
But is it global warming? That's the question.
So that's a conspiracy.
That's the modern dark side of the conspiracy theory of that. Now everyone's realizing climate change skepticism maybe not so good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But go back to the conspiracy you can believe. I mean, I've got a little homegrown one of my own. Do you remember about 5-10 years ago, there was a big thing in the world of dental products, and there's a lot of adverts for these new super duper toothbrushes, and that a range of them, that they all started doing it, putting like a plastic or rubber thing on the back and saying, your tongue's a big source of germs that cause dental plaque.
Yes.
Brush your tongue. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember it also suddenly stopped?
I don't remember it stopping.
I know it was there was a lot of it. Then they went very quiet, and it seemed to me they went very quiet after Mitchell and Webb did a sketch where they had a bunch of marketing men sitting around discussing how they're going to sell more toothbrushes, and one of them comes up, "We could get them to brush their tongues," and suddenly took a back seat, and there went more to the jagged and super duper bristles and electric ones again. And I was thinking, hang on, I think someone touched a nerve there.
That is true. I'm just trying to remember my toothbrush now, whether it's got any rubber bit on the back.
Mine doesn't, but
do.
I think I bought mine because it didn't, and I always thought, well, I'll just use the brush. That's the thing. I'll just use the brush to brush my tongue. It's really not that hard.
Another one that is definitely true: halitosis. Not a medical condition.
Okay.
Was made up by Listerine. The bad breath was a medical condition, and they named it halitosis. They invented all. I mean, obviously, you can get bad breath, but it isn't a specific infection, and it isn't called halitosis. It doesn't exist. It was made up to sell mouthwash.
You're joking.
No, that's true.
So you're just.
there's people out there who believe shampoo have pro-vitamins in. There is no such fucking thing as a pro-vitamin.
Or the here comes the science. Yeah, that part of the shampoo advert.
Yeah. While we're on the mouth, do you remember in school doing the old map of taste buds on the tongue?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's bollocks as well.
Oh,
that was made up.
Made up by who?
My life is a sham.
Why?
It was a shonky scientist who wanted to get more research funding, and it's been taught for decades, and it's rubbish.
These are real low-grade conspiracies now.
Okay, well, I'll give you one from resulting in the mouth, I suppose. Does anyone know about the Coca-Cola conspiracy that they had, where they in the 80s they changed from Coke to New Coke? And
are you gonna? Because that did happen. Are you going to say that they did that deliberately in order to boost sales?
Well,
it's like make it crap.
Apparently, they did it to change from lots of sugar to corn syrup to sweeten their drinks. Right. And what they did, allegedly, I'm saying, please, Coca-Cola, don't come and. You can sue me if you want. You're not going to get a lot, honestly. We've got an iPad upstairs that is probably being used right about now, and a PlayStation. You can take that. It's fine. But anyway, Coke came out with New Coke, and it was supposed to be the new flavor of Coca-Cola. And it was rejected so badly by the population that they had to go back to Classic Coke or Coke Classic. But the ingredients changed in the Coke Classic, allegedly. And it went from lots and lots of sugar to corn syrup, which was cheaper, and I don't think it tasted as nice. But the mass population sucked it up and then took it on. And it was just a way to change the ingredients in Coke.
I definitely heard. I know that it's all true about the new Coke thing.
Right.
I haven't heard that was the reason why. But then I am massively naive, so I will believe whatever I'm told.
Oh yeah, same here, mate.
But why would they do that though? Actually, thinking about it, surely they just change the ingredients. I mean, if it tasted the same, no one would care.
The thing is, if they'd changed, imagine a company and they've, right, okay, we are stopping this beautiful thing that we're selling to you, and we're going to still sell the same thing to you, but it's going to taste slightly different, and you've got no choices about it. If they did it that way, nobody would buy that new product. People will go off and find other products. But if they introduce a new one and then revert back to the old one, which is slightly changed, people still think they got the new stuff, the original stuff. It is a clever way of changing certain bits in their ingredients.
It's classic bait and switch.
Yeah. I
The
can see them doing that.
bastards.
Yeah, I can see them
We're
doing
all
that.
being. We're through the looking glass here.
Yeah. Lee, what about a favourite one from you then?
Well, the David Icke one.
Oh, the David
Yes,
Icke one,
would
yeah.
be a favourite. I mean, the one that always annoys me the most is all the 9/11 bits, and all about the buildings being blown up and not falling down naturally and all that stuff.
Can I tell you a secret about the 9/11 ones?
Go on.
I feel really bad for this, but I flipping love the conspiracies on 9/11.
Yeah, you believe it all, don't you?
It's not that I believe it. I just love the way that people's minds work. And there are bits that I'm like, oh no, I don't want to get drawn in. But
I tell you what, because I've heard all about all these different things as well, and a lot of them you do start thinking, oh, okay, maybe that that kind of makes sense, about the other building, the third one,
yeah,
that fell down, that was nearby and wasn't even hit by anything, that kind of thing. You think, yeah, that is a bit weird, but the one fact about all of that, which makes me think it's absolute nonsense, is the sheer amount of people that would have to have been in on it, and for none of them to say anything, even now. No, sorry, that doesn't stack up.
Well, I was watching.
People are not that good at keeping secrets.
No, it's true. I was watching a video last night when I was messaging you guys about the 9/11. Now, I've watched videos on this since that day, and there was one guy that I'd never seen before, and he said that there was a ball that hit the towers, and it wasn't a plane, it was a ball, and they superimposed over the ball a picture of a plane going into the towers. On live TV, this is, by the way. This is live TV that they superimposed this ball over. And he built the buildings in a computer and worked out the trajectory and the angles of this ball flying towards this building. And you sat there going, well, you haven't exactly got HD resolution on your screen there, have you? You haven't got the best feed that you're mucking around with. It's a bit smudgy, as they always are. Oh, look, there's UFO. Oh, look, it's a bit smudgy. Nuts. Oh, well, that's the best that we've got. And I love the way that they pick on something and they say, oh, if a plane hit a building, it would just be demolished straight away. He showed footage of a F-4 Phantom flying into a massive block of concrete. And this was super hardened concrete, which was to go round a nuclear power station to prove that this plane wouldn't be able to penetrate the nuclear power station. And they flew this plane, and it vaporized this plane when it hit this concrete. Now, he's comparing that to a passenger liner hitting a building, yes, made out of concrete, made out of steel, but also has windows and open air, and it's all open plan, isn't it, inside?
Yeah.
So there's nothing, once you get through the first line of windows, you're gonna carry on until the outside again. But I love their passion with it. I absolutely love it. The only thing that really puzzles me about the 9/11, right, and this is honest truth, the Pentagon hit that they took, and all the footage that disappeared from that, the footage from the petrol station down the road where they should have been able to see the plane flying over, and not the lack of debris on outside, but the hole that it made in the building before it collapsed. That hole seems a little small.
It's true. Yeah, that is a bit of a dodgy part of it.
That's the only thing that I can really. You might have something there. I'm not saying it was just terrorists, because I'm of the belief that yes, it was just terrorists. Some guys just got on a plane, they nicked the plane, and they crashed the plane and killed thousands of people. And I think they got that lucky. I think they did it. But then I revert back to the Pentagon and go, but that hole's a bit small. And
it's one of those things that I think a lot of conspiracy theories thrive on the facts that we tend to have a rather false idea about how things happen thanks to movies.
Yeah, who's that?
I mean, the thing with the third plane and the lack of debris is I remember footage of the Lockerbie crash, and it doesn't look how you imagine a plane crash would. And you find, debris is scattered over. I remember, showing it scattered over, a good half a mile or so, just big chunks dropped in fields. Yeah. And that's sort of very counterintuitive to the way movies and TV have programmed us to think about these sort of things. The other thing, I think, with 9/11 and in particular, because that was kind of the first, I think, real-time conspiracy of where everyone could, record the news as it happened and then go back over it, is that people make an awful lot of all the sort of conflicting statements that come out early on in an incident. And the problem is a lot of it is because people don't actually know, and they're taking as gospel things news crews who are just filling airtime say. You know what I mean? And in we've seen quite a lot of terrible things happen over the last few years, and in the early stages, no one knows what's going on, and theories get mooted, and some irresponsible journalists overstep the mark and claim, a spokesman said, when it was kind of, I heard on the grapevine. But you know what I mean? And a lot of it's the pressure of rolling news.
Yeah.
They have to fill a air, and a lot of times something exciting is happening, but actually nothing's happening at that moment.
Yeah, they don't know what's going on, so they're like, well, let's say someone said this, and that gets us out of all of the trouble.
But then later, people are going, but it was claimed this, but then they changed the story, and it's kind of, well, that's just bad reporting, I'm afraid.
Well, I remember when Princess Diana died, I was actually still. I think we'd been watching an ice hockey game and got back quite late in the early in the morning. So it was about 2:00 when it actually was announced on the news, and they said that she had she'd bruised her leg. I think that was the story that was coming out on the news when we first heard it, and then obviously everything happened over that night. So yeah, people don't know. And that is another conspiracy. What happened to Princess Diana?
Well, can I just jump back to the 9/11? Because there's so much on that. But I would like to ask you guys, and the chat room as well, because the chat room is buzzing at the moment. There's so much going on. And I am reading it as it is going along. But where were you with 9/11? Where exactly? Because everyone remembers where they were and what they were doing. And then we can relate that to the Princess Di stuff as well.
Hmm.
So, Lee, where were you on
At 9/11? I was at work in an office in Lancaster, in the northwest of England, and I remember somebody messaged me on ICQ. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Very early sort of internet message thing, saying that I had not heard about the crash in New York, and I instantly thought, oh, what, like a financial crash? I don't care about that. So I didn't actually look at anything for a while, and just carried on with my work. And remember, we spent the rest of the day just like pretty much not doing much and just watching what was going on.
Yeah. What about you?
Very strange.
What about you, Jim?
Well, weirdly, I was in Lancaster at the time as well, because I was actually living there at the time.
Yeah.
And I'd gone into town, and I'd arranged to meet a good friend of mine for coffee at 3:00, and he was sat outside on one of the tables, and I walked up, and he said, a gang of terrorists have just took down the World Trade Center. And I went, what? And then his phone went, and he looked at it, got a text me, and said, oh, they've lost the second tower too now.
Shit.
And that was when I realized something weird was happening, and I started, you started noticing people stopping and looking at the phones and talking, and we didn't stop long for a coffee. We went home to watch the telly, and it was really, really bizarre because no one could quite believe what was happening, because it was kind of like, what do you mean someone's blown up the World Trade Center? This is supervillain sort of stuff going on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, I wasn't too sure what the World Trade Center was until it actually happened.
Yeah.
I wasn't that au fait with it. But I was at work, and I think I was driving home and listening to the radio, and they were playing music, and quite solemn music, instead of doing all their banter and chit chat. And they'd said that, oh yeah, a plane's hit a building. And I think I had a phone call from Amanda saying that, have you seen what's going on? I went, no, I haven't got a clue. So I made my way home. She'd been off work, sick as well, which scares me because she was off sick on 7/7. So if Amanda's going sick, watch yourself, guys. But
what are you saying, that she's in on it?
I can't say yes or no on that. I'm sworn to secrecy. But I got home, and she had Sky News on, and she went, there was a building there. I went, you what? Because I wasn't that au fait with the World Trade Center. I knew that there was big buildings there, but I didn't know about that. And she went, yeah, there was a building behind that one. I went, whoa. And then I think we sat down, and then we saw the second one go. It was like, oh my God. And my dad, because as you say, like, news scatters really quickly. And my old man was working in London, and he was, I think, coming out of Canary Wharf at the time. And I phoned him and said, nope, get out of there. It's all kicking off, so we don't know what's going on. And I think Canary Wharf got locked down at one point as well from that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember something like that.
Yeah.
I remember those. I mean, it was the early days of the internet, and kind of, I went online on the bulletin boards, like an email round robin affair, as there used to be in the early days. There was like a lot of Americans, I'm packing the car and getting the kids, and we're off up to the hills, and, people didn't know where it was going to stop, and it was genuinely terrifying. And
yeah, I do remember as well thinking, well, is this going to be it now? Are these things going to kick off all the time, all over the place?
Yeah. Andy in the chat room says that he was in Brent Cross Shopping Centre watching it outside the Sony store. Who else? Doreen said that she was in Paisley University Administration's office. And I swear there was another one in here. Deacon Duck, he said he was working in Enfield when someone came into the office, and we all stopped, closed the shop, and watched the second plane hit. We were all silent. It was eerie. Yes, too right it was. Martin Thompson said that he was unemployed at the time, only just out of college for a few months. Okay, there we go. So, okay, moving on to Princess Diana then. So, before we get into the conspiracies about her, where were you guys when that happened?
I was in Glossop in Derbyshire, where I was living, and watching it come in on the news. Like I say, we'd been out. I think my parents were away, so friends of mine were staying around, and we just turned the TV on, and it was all over everything.
Yeah.
And like I said, they told us that she bruised her leg. That was what we first heard.
Yeah. Yeah. What about yourself, Jim?
I was late to the party on that one because I had actually been to a party, an all-nighter at the Midland Hotel in Morecambe, and we rolled out about sometime after 6 a.m, and got a taxi back to Lancaster, got in the cab, and the driver said, "Have you heard?" We all went, "Heard what?" And he just didn't say a word. He just turned on the radio, and obviously every radio station was playing news, and that's how I found out she died. And I was like, whoa. And that was weird because it's kind of, I don't know, car crashes are kind of, you don't expect them to happen to famous people. Although obviously famously they do. James Dean, Mark Bolan. But you know what I mean? It just seemed kind of like really just very, very bizarre.
Yeah. I was in a club in London called Kaleidoscope. I think it was in one of these university bars, and they opened it up to the general public. And strangely enough, it's the same club that I heard that we'd won the Eurovision Song Contest one year as well. So I don't know if there's any
similar
connection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I suppose it was just our turn to win that, wasn't it? But we were coming out of this club, and we'd heard that something had happened, but there weren't enough reports as to what had happened. Maybe someone had broken their arm, or a car crash had happened, and maybe it broken her arm, or someone was hurt, but there was no report of any deaths at all. So we went home, went to bed, and the first thing I remember was Amanda's mum coming into the room, because she was still living at home at the time, and she was just off out to walk the dogs, and she burst in. She went, "Guys, have you heard?" And we are off our faces still. We are still drunk from a couple of hours ago from getting in. And so I was rolled over and went, in my normal teenage way. And she went, "Yeah, Diana's died." And I just went, and rolled back over. And left it 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, we all sobered up very, very quickly. And the TV went on, and spent the rest of the day just watching the TV. And that was weird. The whole country felt really weird after that. It had a very solemn feel to it, as if like a princess had died. Yeah, that was weird. But
so, what are the conspiracy theories behind that then?
Well, what I've read was the driver drunk? There was a car that clipped them. It was all set up by the royal family themselves. They didn't want. Apparently, she was pregnant with Dodi Fayed's child.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the key one, yeah. Oh.
The thing is that the royal family allegedly didn't want the bloodline tainted with a Muslim baby in the family, and so she could have been knocked off.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, yes. It was just a case of, well, we need to sort this out, don't we? And it was sorted out in a tunnel, and all the footage of the crash had disappeared. There was one last shot of them going into the tunnel. Paul Henry was driving it, I think the name of the driver was.
That's right, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
And he was found to be way over the drink driving limit, but there was footage of him walking through doors and driving cars before that and didn't seem that pissed. So it's another one of there's enough there to make me think that people were underhanded, but maybe not in the way that it is reported.
Right. Well, it does seem like a very strange incident, doesn't it? I mean,
I always think about the mystery car, which has never been fully accounted for. I mean, whether it was just a car in the area or in a garbled account, we'll never know. But for me, there's also things like they didn't take it to the nearest hospital, and there seemed to be maybe a little bit of incompetence of how it was handled.
Mm. You wouldn't expect that kind of thing, though, if it was, Princess of Wales. You'd think that there would be a ridiculous amount of security all of the time. There'd be people that would know where she was all of the time, and that you'd have the best of everything straight away.
But she wasn't a HRH at this point, was she?
Still. You'd think that they'd be better than that.
I think that makes a difference.
Right.
They wouldn't have the entourage that followed. She had her personal bodyguard.
Yeah. And
they had a route mapped out, an emergency route. And I don't think the route that they took, it's alleged that they took a totally different route as to what was already planned out.
Mm.
Right.
There's also reports of the paparazzi following them on motorbikes.
Well, I think whatever else, I think the press got off lightly for their general sleazy way they hound and chase after people.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance in this case it did result in a terrible accident.
Mm.
And whether strings were pulled by certain very powerful newspaper owners, so that bit got glossed over and other bollocks distracted us, I don't know.
I don't know who you mean.
No, I don't either. Weird.
It's a conspiracy.
But it's kind of the thing is, I don't think we have all the facts on the Diana case. I think things have been fudged and garbled, and possibly to cover up some culpability. Probably not in a sinister "she must die" kind of way, but just it was a fuck up.
Yeah.
Somebody fucked up and strings have been pulled, so the kind of, fingers haven't been pointed in the right direction. But I think more generally the effect, I mean, I know I've got friends who are quite anti-royalist, and they got all very annoyed about the hoopla that followed it. But I found it kind of just as a student of human nature truly fascinating, because I think kind of her death really hit people, because it was kind of like, it's one of those, I mean, any sort of sudden death, I mean, I speak from some experience, is shocking. I mean, it's one thing if an aged grandparent who's 96 pops off, because on one hand you sort of go, it's coming. But when it's somebody young, particularly someone rich and famous who has the best of everything, it's kind of, what, really? They're dead? How did that happen? So, and something as mundane as a road accident, it does seem unbelievable. And that's the seed that, that can't happen. That's the seed on which the conspiracies sort of grow. So, it's kind of, I can understand why the mythology has sprung up around it. You know what I mean? It was no surprise to me whatsoever when I heard the first conspiracy theories coming out not too long afterwards. I thought, yep, that'd be right.
Yeah. Well, there was all the paparazzi pictures of them the weeks before. I remember seeing these pictures, going into the cafe and seeing the newspapers full of these pictures of them holidaying, and they were the new the new love of the country, really, weren't they? It was something for the press to grab onto. One of the most beautiful women in the world, the most photographed women in the world, and her new bloke. And it was, oh, well, hang on, she's happy? Well, some people will go, well, good for her. And other people go, well, I don't like that. And then the people that don't like it possibly look at the royal family and go, well, they shouldn't like it either. Well, maybe they are going to be knocking them off anytime soon. I don't know. So,
well, the thing is, the whole Diana life story was played out in the press as such a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it turned into a soap opera with the breakup and the interview. It's almost, in this case, there's almost the power of narrative driving these conspiracy theories. The story can't end just with a random accident, because that's not how soap stories work. This isn't how tragic fairy tales work. There has to be a wicked witch. You know what I mean? There has to be a villain. There has to be speculation. Eventually somebody has to be unmasked. We're still waiting for that unmasking. But, it still trundles on. And, the Daily Express every week still has something about Diana dying. Another element
it sells,
of the press.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it still sells. People are still waiting for that last bit of the story.
Mm. And as soon as you hear about, there's a safe with a book locked up in it, with all the facts and some cassette tapes of witnesses and photographs and their cameras all locked up and not to be opened until 21:15, then that just fuels that as well. People are like, I want to get in there. I need to get in there.
Well, that's one thing, I think it is important to acknowledge is that, the Kennedy assassination is the same. There's also questions about the Dunblane shooting, that things have got, security notices on that, are not to be revealed until, long in the future when they can't do any more harm. Yeah. And instantly, you have to think of kind of what the fuck is in there, really? What aren't you telling us?
Yeah. What's the Dunblane shooting? Is there some conspiracy behind that? That's theory behind that.
It's dark stuff, and I've not ventured too far into it, but I did check it. There are reports on it that are sealed, and I think they're sealed for 100 years. No. And I mean, this is from what I've read. It could be crackpot stuff, but the reason why there's these sort of files out of our view is that there are fishy things about the guy who did it, about how he got the firearm. That's a bit murky, but also it's linked to a child abuse scandal in that school. And it was a brutal silencing of witnesses.
Right.
So this is really dark, really fucking dark. Whether it's true or not, but I do know there are things that aren't in the public domain in sealed files about it, particularly about the guy who did it. So whether he actually has, embarrassing connections, because often these things can get covered up just simply because it will reflect badly on someone he knows or someone he was close to.
So I suppose that's not really. I mean, when you say about conspiracy theory, a cover-up isn't really quite the same thing, is it?
Well, the thing is, when there is a cover-up like that, and there's kind of these things being withheld, that creates a void in which conspiracies will spring up.
Yeah,
because obviously people, well, what aren't they telling us? Why can't we see that? What's the reason? I mean, I did a show earlier about Bella and the Witch Elm, and that has several sort of pseudo conspiracy theories about who really killed her, and it was the identity was known, but it was covered up because it'd be embarrassing for the very powerful aristocratic family who actually owned the land it's on.
Oh, bless them.
So it's kind of there's all sorts of like crazy stuff there. But I think if anything was covered up, it probably would have been just to not sully their good name. It's a very petty reason, but nothing really sinister. But it's very interesting. But once the authorities don't start being honest with us, that's when the gaps appear. I mean, currently you've got like kind of lots of conspiracy about vaccines and whatnot. But that's born of years and years of people getting health advice and then getting more health advice that contradicts it. And it's like, are we sure currently, butter, good or bad for us? It's been bad, it's been not so bad, it's been terrible, it's been, it's all right again now, and kind of after you get this kind of drip of contradictory statements from experts, this is when people start to stop trusting experts and stop trusting authority.
It's just like the Daily Mail list of things that can cause cancer and things that can stop cancer being essentially the same list.
Pretty much, yeah. But, once you get... I can understand why some people go to the tinfoil hat end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I mean, because, you get this from experts in particular, that, you never get a climb down where they say, actually, we were wrong about that. They just paper over it and tell you something else. And after a while, you start beginning to wonder, is this actually all bollocks? I mean, all right, dinosaurs are one. I've loved dinosaurs since I was a kid. Now, over the years, I have seen them go from cold-blooded to warm-blooded to a bit of both, to back again to both. They've had feathers, they've not had feathers, they've walked around with their tails in the air because no one found any tail tracks. They're going to dragging their tails again. Iguanodon, it's walked on 2 legs, had spikes on its thumbs, it's had spikes on its nose, it's walked on 4 legs, it's had spikes on its back, it's walked 2 legs and 4-legged. That fucking thing doesn't know whether it's coming or fucking going. And I don't now either. And I'm beginning to wonder, actually, is all this dinosaur stuff bollocks as well? Because my trust in kind of what the scientists are telling me has been eroded by some new bollocks theory that gets touted as, no, this is it, this is the truth, every 5 years or so. I mean, obviously dinosaurs did exist, but I can understand why some people just go, fuck it, no, it's all bollocks, I'm sick of your nonsense. What do you mean they had feathers? That's wrong, I think, sometimes authorities can be very high-handed and very arrogant, and that's where you get distrust. That's where you get skepticism. And as we said earlier, I really think skepticism, bizarrely, is a major driver for all these conspiracy theories. Because people have lost faith in experts or and authorities telling them stuff over the years.
I was going to say it's a very dangerous thing to do when you can come out. I think was it Michael Gove who said, I think in the whole Brexit debate, I think the people have had enough of experts.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not that for somebody that high up in government to be able to come out and say that straight into the media, and for people to just go, "Yep, that's right." Is utterly ridiculous. But that, conspiracy theories seem to come up almost straight away if there's any. There was a terrorist attack in Barcelona, wasn't there today? I haven't looked on Twitter, but I would not be surprised if there's already people making up various conspiracies about that.
There will be people saying it's a false flag operation already on YouTube. I do not doubt.
Yeah, they were for London and Manchester. The other week.
I mean, in the 80s, me and my friends had a joke that when something terrible happened, there was the newsrooms, and next door there was an office full of comedians who instantly came up with all the sick jokes you'd hear that night down the pub, and they'd go out on the same AP wire. Now it seems soon anything happening, someone's got the conspiracy, ready to go, and a video, and probably a book by tomorrow. It's kind of
and the turnaround on books is just crazy nowadays. I can't believe that sometimes. Right, I'm adding Andy into the call because he wishes to join in for a second. Andy, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me, sir?
I can.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So first of all, I just want to say congratulations on 100, Elton. Well done. Doff my cap to you, sir.
Thank you.
Word to your mothers and all that. Yes, I have 2 conspiracy theories which you might like. I got more, but there's 2 that you might like.
Go on.
The first one is, have you heard of the Titanic conspiracy?
Is this that it's actually wasn't the Titanic that sunk? It was a sister ship, and it was like an insurance scam?
Yeah, that's the one exactly.
That's a good one. I love this one. Go on.
For those who aren't familiar, there was Titanic had two sister ships, the Olympic, which was launched before the Titanic, and the Britannic, which was launched afterwards. Forget about the Britannic; it sank in World War One. Nothing interesting happened there. But the Olympic, brand new, state of the art, that was the big flagship. Was involved in an incy-wincy, teeny-whittle fender bender with the Royal Navy ship. Now, what happened is, they had this fender bender. They pulled up, got out, exchanged insurance information, as you do. And then it went to arbitration court to say who was responsible. Now, the Royal Navy ran this arbitration court, and would you believe it, they said they weren't to blame. I'm sure it was all completely fair and above board. But anyway, so Olympic there, brand new, state-of-the-art ship, was effectively fucked. It had to go all the way back to Belfast to be repaired, which meant Titanic was going to be late, and they had to stop all work to fix Olympic. Now, the conspiracy goes that the damage on Olympic was so bad, it was like, look, this thing's got one voyage left in it. Then it's just fucked. So the plan was, what we do is we swap the nameplates around and some other little features, and then we present the Titanic, which will then go across and then, and please see my finger quotes here, hit an iceberg. And fortunately, though, because this was all run by JP Morgan, he would have other ships nearby to just come in at the last minute and rescue the passengers, and it'd all go swimmingly, and it'd be a good news story. They'd get the insurance money from the Titanic, not the Olympic, the one which was fucked. And it was all fine. And apparently it was all going fine until they hit the wrong iceberg. Wouldn't you believe it?
So
and
they
it sank.
actually hit an iceberg.
They actually hit an iceberg while trying to do a conspiracy to hit an iceberg.
Trying to hit an iceberg. Well, okay.
Yes. And that, I think this had been floating around a little while, but it kind of apparently took off in a big way when someone read on an image from the wreck. One of the propellers on the Titanic has a number. I think it's something like 823 or something like that, or which was actually the number assigned to Olympic. And everyone goes, "Oh, see, it's true. It's the Olympic." Blah 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 blah. Not failing to realise things like propellers are actually quite interchangeable. Yeah. And there's nothing else in the entire wreck site that says anything to do with Olympic or anything like that. Plus, as we've already mentioned, it's very hard to get groups of more than 3 people to keep a secret at the best of times.
Wasn't there something about the portholes as well? There was a number of portholes down the side of the Titanic was different to the Olympic.
That's one of the things they point to. They say, oh, if you look at here, there's the porthole numbering is different. Because, when you're looking at the wreck today, you're looking at 2 parts of a wreck, which, hit the surface of the ocean at a not inconsiderate amount of speed. So, yeah. Anyway, so that was largely the Titanic conspiracy. The other one,
can I just stick with the Titanic one? So what if they say that it was the Olympic that sank?
Yep.
What happened to the Titanic?
The Titanic had a long and happy life posing as the Olympic until about the 1930s when it was scrapped because it was too expensive to run.
So surely somebody would have noticed, hang on, this isn't the Titanic.
Well, to be fair, the ships were largely identical. It's a bit like when you see...
But there was some differences, there weren't there?
They opened the glove compartment and found the manual of the Titanic in the Olympic. It's like,
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, it really wasn't huge. I mean, the only real difference was the promenade windows on the exterior were covered on the Titanic and not on the Olympic, but they were just panels. So if you wanted to do it...
The amount of people that I see on train stations taking pictures of trains, I'm sure there would be somebody who would go, hang on.
Absolutely. Well, obviously back in the day, people were much more forthright and believing, and they wouldn't subscribe to these things about conspiracies and such madness. But the second one I've got for you is that Yuri Gagarin was not the first man into space, merely the first one to make it back alive.
Ooh.
I've heard something along these lines.
So if you cast your minds back to the heady days of the Cold War, the space race, the goal to be first, such as it was, the Americans, being those upstanding, forthright and honest chaps who like to crow about their achievements, would announce launches months in advance, and they'd big up their astronauts and do press tours and junkets and everything, and everyone knew John Glenn and Alan Shepard and the rest of the Mercury 7 long before the actual launch. The Soviets, though, were a much more sneaky bunch, wouldn't actually announce a launch until after it had landed. So the Americans didn't realize Yuri Gagarin had been into space until he got back. Slightly embarrassing. now the conspiracy theory here goes that Gagarin was merely the first one to make it back. The Soviets had tried 2 previous attempts to launch cosmonauts into space, hadn't gone so well, but not wanting to distract from their glorious efforts to be the first and, you know, get bad PR and stuff like that, just didn't tell anyone. That's it, basically.
You can't blame them, though, can you?
Well, you can't. You know, it's bad PR. You can see what happened with the whole Apollo 13. You end up with Ron Howard making a movie about it.
So if they just said, if people just said this, or is there some evidence behind it? Where's the hook to this?
As with all conspiracy theories, there's some crazy person out there who, you know. So one of the things is there's a cosmonaut who was called Vladimir Ilyushin. Well, I don't know if he was a cosmonaut; he was a test pilot. And apparently, the day before, 2 days before Gagarin's launch, there was an article in a Soviet newspaper, The Daily Worker, saying he was involved in a serious car accident. And that was actually a cover story for the fact that his attempt to go in orbit had gone horribly wrong and he'd been wounded and so forth. So he was in a coma. There was another person they attributed to, Valentin Bondarenko. I think I'm mutilating that correctly. But again, who was killed actually in training for the mission. And again, the Soviet government just covered it all up and just swept that under the rug to be the first one. It's one of those, once again, I think the mission that Gagarin was on was something like Vostok 3A, because the previous ones had been unmanned. But no, it means surely there was 2 attempts beforehand. They died. It's a bit like when you look at the Apollo missions, it goes Apollo 1, which caught fire, and then nothing until like Apollo 7.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's just missing people, basically.
Mm.
It's that lovely combination of, you know, people putting 2 and 2 together and making 17.
Am I right in thinking I've heard, I don't know whether this is an actual conspiracy theory or not, but I have definitely heard this, that the Russians also crashed into the moon at some point.
Well, that's not a conspiracy theory. They actually did that. Not with a manned ship. They crashed probes.
Yeah, I know they crashed probes. I've heard it might have been on one of these Discovery channels where they just pump out conspiracy, Shark Week, and Nazis, and that's all they do really nowadays, isn't it?
Would you like to know why they do that sort of stuff? Just as an aside, as to why you get so many of those bullshit conspiracy, alien, ancient stories. It's because they don't have to pay researchers.
No, they just make it up.
It's straight, exactly. You make it up and say you're just asking questions. You don't have to do any fucking research. You can do any old bollocks. Throw in some stock footage. There you go. You got a 40-minute program. We're golden.
Damn, we should get on this.
We should, man. You know, we could do a whole podcast about that sort of shit.
Shonky TV channel.
No, don't give him ideas.
Dodgy research.
No, you don't need that. Nobody wants that.
No. I mean, obviously the big space conspiracy one, which I will not brook anyone fucking repeating, is the Apollo bullshit, saying that they faked the whole moon landings. I mean, for fuck's sakes, man. Even if you could get all the millions of people in the US involved to say it was not real.
Right.
The Soviets in the middle of this bloody space race, so they're just going to keep stum about it.
I heard recently a theory about that actually what could have happened, and I don't believe this for a second, I think it was all legit and we went to the moon and it was fine.
You sound like you're scratching your beard, though.
It's a good thing you say that, because otherwise Buzz will come to your house and punch you in the face.
Go on, sorry, mate.
But one thing that people were saying that they did go to the moon, it did happen, but all of the equipment wasn't working. They couldn't get the signal back. They couldn't get the TV signals. So as a backup to that, they had all this stuff faked, which they could churn out and say, look, we're on the moon. And that's why it looks dodgy and that's why it looks fake, because actually what you're seeing is the things that they recreated to cover themselves. The technology didn't work.
I guarantee the question would have been asked, should we have a fake or a backup just in case? I guarantee that it wouldn't have been, I'm not saying it was recorded, but someone would have asked a question, what happens if we don't? what is our backup plan to this? And if we can't, then we need to be one step ahead of the Russians. So should we do a backup? Should we fake something just in case?
It was going to be a huge propaganda victory. I know when I looked into the moon landing stuff, I mean, an awful lot of it hinges on anomalies in the photographs. And I think a lot of that comes down to, famously, a lot of photographs are composites from different things, and it was dodgily done. That's why there's weird stuff on them. It's just photo processing artifacts. But
you also only tended to see the best photos, which is why NASA got so sick with this. They released the entire archive a couple of years ago.
But it's also that what people don't realize that people have been touching up photos long before Photoshop. And some of those famous photos of the moon landings, I mean, they are fucking phenomenal photographs. I mean, as someone who struggled to master photography, it's kind of like, fuck, they are good. Jesus, they are good for untrained photographers. And I do not doubt there might have been some hooky touching up to make sure they looked fucking brilliant. Plus, then they were got sent out to magazines who would have touched them up again just as a matter of course.
Yeah.
And that's where all the weird stuff comes from. But again, it's a lot like 9/11. There's kind of a lot of people drawing their scientific knowledge from outmoded sources, science they don't understand, and how they think science should work from what they've seen on the telly. I mean, so there is still, I think it's still there, isn't it? They actually placed a mirror on the moon, and you can shine a laser up to it.
Yeah,
There's laser reflectors at all of the landing sites.
Yeah.
That's how they measure the distance between the Earth and the Moon, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Martin Thompson
I actually
in the chat room just mentions the photo with the fairies. I'm sure everyone remembers that.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely stunning how they did that, because that went for years, decades, and no one could figure out how they did it. And that's because they literally cut out a picture of the fairies and just stood it up on a branch. So there was no faking of the photograph, because it was photographing a thing that was actually there.
Well, some of the figures actually had movement because of the breeze.
Yeah. Genius. Who was it? Was it Arthur Conan Doyle was really into that? He totally believed it. He bought it all there.
Deacon Duck in the chat room also says, as we're talking about space, what about the Challenger disaster? It blew up to generate interest in the space exploration again. I suppose when it was becoming routine again.
I'll never apply malice when ignorance and stupidity will make do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Challenger, that was just a clusterfuck. I mean, the whole shuttle program, I mean, that's a separate shonky lab on of itself, but the whole shuttle program was kind of a classic misstep. I mean, the reason it blew up basically is it was designed to do one thing for the US Air Force, who once they built it said, actually, you know what, we don't want it now. Kind of left NASA with this thing. And then NASA's desperately trying to get the missions going rapidly enough, cut corners basically. They done fucked up.
Yeah, America seems to be the villain in all of these conspiracies.
America's the villain now, for crying out loud. We all know that.
Yeah, I'm amazed why everyone is so surprised when bad things happen over there, because apparently they've been doing it for years.
Yeah. So, well, just before we jump onto JFK, because I feel that's where it's heading at the moment. Moon landings, just go around the table at the moment. Hands up, who thinks it's fake? Jim?
I don't think it's fake. Though I think some of the photos might have been improved for propaganda purposes.
Yeah. Andy?
Oh, I don't think it's fake. And if I find anyone here who does think it's fake, I will come and nut you.
Lee?
Definitely fake.
Right, well, if you'll excuse me, gents, I've got to head over to Lee's place.
No, I don't think it was fake at all.
No, I don't think so either. I love the way that people think it is, and everything has just been backed up again and again to prove that it wasn't fake. We went there, guys. We went there.
However, there is one thing that I've still not got to the bottom of. And this is
just one more thing.
Just one more thing. But famously, in Diamonds Are Forever, which came out in 1971, Bond wanders accidentally into a studio where they're faking a moon landing. Now, the common explanation is kind of, well, this is tying into the popular moon landing hoax. But when I was researching moon landing hoaxes and the history of them, they don't actually kick in till a lot later. One of the early books that was really the seminal work on the "we didn't go to the moon" claptrap came out in 1976 and was self-published. And there's a couple of years after that, you get Capricorn 1, the movie, about a faked Mars landing, and then the moon landing conspiracies really suddenly start springing up like mushrooms. Now, I wonder, kind of like, it's always struck me as a weird scene. I've never actually found out why that scene's in Diamonds Are Forever. And I'm wondering, was it some sort of Hollywood joke? The moon landings, they probably got Kubrick to do it. And, it was just like a little gag, and they put it in the movie, and that sowed a seed.
Well, how long after, with Kubrick being involved in the conspiracy of filming the moon landings, do the times cross over at any point?
Well, he did 2001, was released in 68. So obviously that was being filmed 60, 66, 67.
The landings were 69.
The landing was 69. Apollo 8 was 68. So, the Apollo program was well on its way.
Right. When was the film? The name of the film escapes me at the moment. The one with Jack Nicholson.
The Shining?
Yeah, The Shining. When was that released?
That was 70... No, it was 80, wasn't it?
Oh, bloody hell.
Let me see. Yeah, 1980.
Yeah. The Shining. Yeah.
Miles away then.
Yeah, but that's all, again, if you subscribe to that bollocks, it has all these hidden meanings about Kubrick acknowledging... Oh, yeah, there's a whole documentary
All
feature about...
sorts.
I watched that, and it started off actually quite interesting, and then as soon as they got onto the whole Apollo stuff, it's like, there's the tinfoil hats.
I love it when the tinfoil hats come out. Come on.
I'm surprised you haven't spoken about the tinfoil hats in the context of conspiracy theories.
Well, yeah. I haven't even said that I'm wearing one at the moment, have I? No.
We just take it as read these days that you're always wearing it.
Yeah.
No, he's actually covered. The house is covered in tinfoil. So he doesn't need to wear a hat inside.
Yeah. It's easier if I just tell you when I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat, I feel. But we were going down a murky road of America being the bad guy, which relates us, I guess, to JFK, which is one of the biggest ones out there. It's definitely in the top 5, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Probably,
I think so, yeah.
So was anyone born then? Anyone around? 'Cause I'm guessing none of us were.
No.
No.
Definitely not, no. But I've had to live with it. For my
the guilt?
Well, yes, yeah. With knowing, being called Oswald for most of my life. Yeah. So what was the reason behind why they think that the government, because that's the main conspiracy, isn't it? That it was the government that killed him and set Lee Harvey Oswald up, and that there was another gunman. That is my understanding of what
it's not always the government
is.
responsible. It's not always the government that's to blame, but it's always the whole there's a second shooter from the grassy knoll.
As to who masterminded it, well, take your pick. Russia, Cubans, the mob, aliens, Masons,
Crew of the Red Dwarf,
Illuminati.
my favourite.
A combination of all the above. The David Icke school of conspiracies.
Yeah, I've heard lots of conspiracies about this, whether it's the mafia or something to do with the Cuban Missile Crisis as well. The Bay of Pigs was involved. But it's from the Zabruta film, isn't it? Where I feel a lot of this has sprung up. Where you get the
Oliver Stone, isn't it?
Well, that's from the movie, but the film was still out there, wasn't it?
The conspiracy theories were out there well before Oliver Stone started giving us his take about anti-Castro pigeons, saying "coo, coo." He's an old Bill Hicks joke.
Yeah, so it was that film that really rocked everything, and I suppose Oliver Stone brought it back into the mainframe, really, of people actually thinking about it, because everything's locked up. Once again, this has all been locked up and put into a safe seal, isn't it? And not to be opened for another 80 years.
I think it's actually more closer to coming out, actually. As because I remember Oliver Stone, he did have a hand in a cyberpunk thriller miniseries in the 90s called Wild Palms.
Mm-hmm.
It was set in early 21st century about VR going mental. But in that, it was set after the date the files will have been declassified. And he made a little cameo appearance on a news report in the background saying, "So, Oliver, how do you feel about the revelations that have come out about the declassified documents about JFK?"
Yeah. So what is everyone's feelings about what happened to JFK? Was there a second gunman at all?
I think so.
Really?
Well, wasn't something someone said in the radio show I was listening to this week about Oswald? There's reports of him not even, being in that part of the building at the time. The rifle that he was using would not have been able to make. It would have been a very, very difficult shot to make.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. I don't think he did it, or at least there was someone else.
Interesting. I don't mean to say, oh, do you actually think there was a second? I didn't mean to sound like, oh, well, you silly sod, you shouldn't think like that. there are a million ways of actually thinking of this, because I've seen this footage and I've made my own assumptions about it. I'm sure a million people have thought about their assumptions as well. I am of the belief that he was the gunman and there was no second gunman. Now, I don't have any proof of that. I just feel that that shot could have been taken. And
because the conspiracy goes further, doesn't it? Into what was the guy's name who shot Lee Harvey Oswald?
Ruby.
Jack Ruby.
Yeah, that he was involved in it all as well, and that's why, to silence Oswald.
Well, that's where it gets
by killing him.
Gets proper murky, doesn't it? Because you're taking out someone who is your lead suspect, and then all of a sudden it's, well, okay, now what do we do? It just throws everything into turmoil.
Well, the thing is, you could have two separate conspiracies there. It has always struck me that it was a very odd thing for Jack Ruby to do.
Mm.
And it was very convenient as well. So you do wonder whether we've got our man, let's put a capper on it.
What happened to Ruby? He died of cancer, didn't he? At a later stage.
I don't know.
I think
I'll have to ask Google.
It'll be the first time we've asked Google tonight. But then again, it wouldn't be a show if we didn't go to Google.
It will be the first time we've admitted it.
Yeah.
Lung cancer.
Lung cancer.
Yes.
Andy, what are your thoughts? Do you think there was a second gunman?
Oh, I'm a big believer in Occam's razor. The simplest solution is almost always the actual solution.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I'm thinking, Lee Harvey was most likely the gunman, and Jack Ruby, for whatever reason, a sudden bout of patriotism, decided to get vengeance upon him. I'm just like, if they were going to kill Lee Harvey Oswald, you'd have done it off camera somewhere. if you're going to go with a conspiracy, they always kind of go half-hearted. Where they manage to arrange all of this stuff absolutely superbly, and then they've got to clean up these little ends in public, and it's just like, do you? I mean, if you're good enough to set it all up with a second gunman and to shoot the president of the United States with all these agencies that are coordinating it, and then you just have to hire a local nightclub owner to come and shoot the guy, it's like, because there's a lot of stairs in Texas. I'm just saying, it'd have been very easy for him to fall down some of them. Hell, resisting arrest, they could have just, when they were arresting him, shot him,
Yeah. Apparently, the files are due to be made public in October this year.
Shut up.
Oh, interesting.
But President Trump could block that, though.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I know, we'll all be dead by then. It'd be fine. The thing is, though, when those files come out, even if they just don't say anything new, they just, whatever, no one will believe them. Well, no one who subscribes to the conspiracy theories will believe them.
No, that's true.
But yeah, it's going to go either way. Either it will come out and say something that confirms it all, and then you'll have one load of people saying, well, actually, no, that's nonsense. Or the other way around.
My fear with Trump is that he'll have his desk, he'll have two buttons on there, and one will say, more orange juice, and one will say, open the files for JFK. And he'll accidentally press the more orange juice one, and then miss his chance to open the files. And you think, fucking melon.
To be fair, if that is your biggest concern with our president, mate, you are having a good fucking day.
Officially, I think he's an absolute twat. He's a proper knob. And, Mr. @real Donald Trump, prove it to me in court that you're not a knob, please. Because that means he has to stand up and say, no, I am not a knob. And we'll all just laugh at you and go, no, you are.
That's not even allegedly, is it?
No, I'm taking it to the man. Jim,
Literally.
did we get your thoughts on, was there a second gunman at all?
I'm not sure. I've heard so much over the years about it. It's now getting to the point where it's very difficult for me to tell what's credible and what isn't. I mean, I think there are questions about you'd have to be a hell of a marksman to pull off those three shots. I mean, I remember seeing one show where some numbnuts guy disproved it by using the same action, firing at three targets in the same time period. I said, well, that's all very well, but you're lying flat on your ass, taking a straight shot at three stationary targets. Yeah. He was firing from an angle. You know what I mean? At a moving target. So not entirely convinced. Yeah, it's possible to fire off three shots with that rifle in that time, but it's not entirely the same. And, false equivalence, as they say these days. But it's one of those things. I mean, I think, I'm always wary about using the Occam's razor thing because, I have studied history and actually things sometimes are quite complicated. So simplest is best isn't actually always right. And with JFK, I think it's like Jack the Ripper. There's now just so much signal to noise in trying to weigh up actually what happened. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to tell. It's, because you can find, very respected experts looking at the famous footage and giving you two entirely different conclusions. And it's kind of, I don't really have time to do a ballistics degree to see which one's right and, work out the flaws in their arguments.
Yeah, that's true.
So I would recommend Stephen King did a novel.
Just one.
Where a guy goes back in time to try and stop the assassination.
Oh man, I'm there.
It's a really interesting book because it does cover up.
A program of that recently, wasn't that just released recently?
I think there was. I'm not sure if there has been a film. I think there was. I'm not sure.
It was a series.
Yeah, it's called the 11/22/63.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there has been a series. I've not seen it yet. I only just read the book last year, but the book is very interesting. It does put together a convincing case that how Harvey could have operated alone and done it, and sheds an awful lot of interesting light on the character of the guy. And he was a troubled man with a strange background, shall we say?
Doesn't he support Fidel Castro as well? Not like officially, but he was a bit of a.
He was a sympathizer. He had defected to Russia, then came back, and he had links to all kinds of dodgy people. And so yeah, but I do recommend that novel for an interesting take on it.
Mm. Excellent. Yeah, I might dive into that. I know I've got I wanted to see the series on that because it's got a great premise that I'm gonna dive in on straight away. But yeah, I might actually give the book a go.
Yeah, it's worth it. So there's very interesting stuff about the concept of changing time and how he sets it up. Mm-hmm. It's really fun, and also just a really fun insight into kind of going back to an earlier and modern day America and going back to a very different age where society was very different, and how he struggles to blend in, and really fascinating stuff.
Good stuff. Well, are there any other ones that we want to touch on?
Chemtrails.
Chemtrails. Piss me
chemtrails.
Fuck off.
Go on, Lisa. What are chemtrails then?
For some reason, people think that
No. Some idiots.
Yes.
Idiots think
that the perfectly explainable and reasonable science behind the white clouds that come out of the back of jet engines are actually not the science. They're actually chemicals being churned out over us to control us or influence us or do whatever. And that this is a huge conspiracy of the entire aviation industry to do that, and has been going since the jet engine has existed.
Before that, I mean, propeller planes threw out contrails as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all exhaust, isn't it?
But it's water vapor hitting the exhausts.
Yeah.
And it freezes at altitude and becomes these clouds. But some, and I use the word again, idiots insist that these are chemicals. And then you see pictures where there's an aircraft landing and, it's kind of a very humid day or very, a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. And you get those big clouds of vapor coming off the wings, and they smugly post, some pilot forgot to turn off his chemtrail button before he landed. We're on to you. And you just want to go up to you and say, please, here's a leaflet for vasectomies. To do everyone a favour.
It doesn't seem to have come from anywhere other than somebody has seen these things following a plane and gone, well, that is clearly chemicals.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, what are they doing with them? And it's like, they're controlling our mind or controlling population. And it's no one can agree what the chemicals are doing. They just go, they're doing something.
They say about controlling the weather as well, don't they?
Chucking chemicals.
Yeah.
Hey, I've not heard that one.
Have you not?
No.
It's about seeding.
I've heard.
Seeding
yes,
clouds.
I know that is a thing. That works, doesn't it? To some degree, you can do sort of cloud
seeding. To some degree, it does
work,
but you'd already need the clouds there. Yeah.
Yeah. But why you'd want to do that just at random on passenger jets? I don't know.
I don't know why anyone would want to fuck around with a massive lake in the sky. There's just nothing. Why would you want to do that?
This is what's so good about this one, is like for everything we've talked about so far, there is some sort of massive real world event, or there's something behind it. There is some kind of way how if you forgot that people were idiots, you could go, okay, well, that kind of could make sense. This is pointless. It's absolutely pointless. I can't believe that it's got so big.
Well, it's when you get back to, what you were saying at the beginning about the flat Earth. If people won't accept all of the evidence that the Earth is not flat. And the other thing as well I don't get with the whole flat Earthers is they seem happy to accept that every other celestial body is a sphere. It's just the Earth that's not. And it's also when you see someone's done orbital mechanics showing that, look, if the Earth orbits the sun, it's all these doing circles, whereas if all the other planets orbit the Earth, it's these crazy, weird, massive geometric orbits they have to do to line up. And it's just like, wow. I mean, before the internet existed, I honestly didn't believe people could choose not to believe in science. It was like I was kind of comfortably in my ignorance before that.
I once worked with a guy who didn't believe in gravity, and his reasoning for that was birds,
Birds.
because they don't fall down.
So it's really a state of mind.
So this
Wow.
it's not really a conspiracy so much as just a
An idiot.
nutcase. Yeah. But I can't remember what I was going to say now. So something with the flat Earth thing, they claim that the curved windows that you get in aeroplanes have been put there deliberately to make the Earth look. So when you look out of the window in an aeroplane, it looks curved because of the way the glass is in the plane, and that's done deliberately. You know, every single plane that's ever been made with windows has been done that way to fool everyone into thinking that the Earth is not flat.
Oh, bless them.
Yeah.
These are the same people that believe about the fluoride, and that's controlling the populace as well. Fluoride in the water.
Yeah.
Why would they need to? Because they're chucking it out the back of planes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think on the chemtrails, I mean, that seems to be a fairly recent one that's emerged. But when I was digging about it, I did find there was a shady government experiment which involved spraying people unknowingly with chemicals to test shit in the 50s. I'll put a link in the Skype chat. It was in St. Louis, and it's unbelievable kind of but apparently true, that say that government contractors, tested spraying zinc cadmium sulfide on the population of St. Louis as part of a biological weapons program, and they told them it was to sterilize and wipe out disease, and a lot of people got sick and died.
It doesn't surprise me someone
Is
trying
this-
that back in the 50s.
Is this the American government again?
Yes, yeah. But it's likewise. I mean, it is also a fact that in the 20s, during Prohibition, the gangsters were buying industrial alcohol to make illegal hooch with. The government started, this is true, they put poisons into it to dissuade people.
Mm-hmm.
1,000 people in the New York area alone died from it.
But they were dissuaded.
They were fatally dissuaded. But you know what I mean? It's kind of in a culture where governments have done these very immoral things. I found out some appalling things this afternoon. The CIA had a program of grave robbing in the 50s. They were stealing human corpses for testing the effects of radioactive isotopes, mainly children,
Oh, God.
under the charming title of Project Sunshine. Now, all this stuff has recently, in the last sort of 10, 20 years, has been coming out due to documents being declassified. And so I think this has been a huge trigger, to the conspiracy world, because, when you've got a government poisoning its own citizens and grave robbing, it's kind of, we are in Plan 9 from outer space territory here.
Should the governments of the world be able to lock up and classify these sort of reports that they have? Because that is lending credence to the people that want to create these conspiracy theories.
Well, you vote for them; they can do what they like.
But should they be
Otherwise-
allowed to do that?
Well, if you don't want them to, vote for someone else.
No,
I think
no,
that's
I'm-
how
because we could see how
that's
well that
the
works.
No, but that's how the system's supposed to work. That's what it's supposed to be for. It's just people don't care.
yeah, let's see
But-
what happens in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
Oh, I love your naivety. We're going to still be here in 4 years.
It's not even expecting us to get to October. Why then?
But, the question still stands. Should they be allowed to classify certain things under the... Well, they normally use such words as classification for the general populace, that it's a need-to-know basis. Should they be allowed to do that in certain situations?
I think you kind of have to, really, because there's going to be there's going to be other governments which will have no problems with doing that kind of thing. And if you're just telling everyone everything, you're going to run into problems. The question is how moral the people are that are doing this and how far they can push it.
I think that's the danger of when you get people with open checkbooks and no accountability, that shortcuts and immoral things will start happening if it's not properly, regulated. And sometimes I think, confidentiality and secrecy, is used to stop, proper oversight occurring. The fact that, you have to have some secrets is not, it's not wise, for example, to have, like a big Facebook page with all our, blueprints of our defense bases on, for example. Probably not a good idea. But, at the same time, it's kind of, the government should be grave robbing and doing experiments on bodies without people knowing. That's out of line,
Yeah.
They shouldn't be poisoning their own citizens.
Well, that comes back. It's not so much that they shouldn't be telling us; they just shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But it's kind of the whole intelligence thing is quite interesting. Because frequently, you find when you read books about either the espionage and the intelligence agencies that frequently you've got different departments all doing their own thing and crossing over and stepping on each other's toes, and no one knows what's going on anyway or who's really in charge. And it's kind of, sometimes I think these things have to be reined in a bit. And, someone has to know what's really going on.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, there is always someone that, or there should be someone that knows, shouldn't there? Who holds the key to the JFK locker? Who holds the key to the Roswell locker?
Is it the Rothschilds? Is that, what's that? What's the group? There's like a group. Yeah, that could be it. Of the big, powerful business people. The 6 or 7 businesses that actually run the world, and they have their secret meetings.
Oh, Jesus!
What's it called?
Not the Bilderbergers.
Yeah, that's the one. Apparently, there's this group of people who meet and they run everything.
Well, that comes down to the Illuminati as well, doesn't it?
I thought we established they were nice people.
Nah.
Well, there's the historical Illuminati, then there's the conspiracy Illuminati, which take many different forms, though.
Yeah.
But the thing is, again, it's a note of caution before, totally dismissing anything you hear in a conspiracy theory. The Bilderberg group I heard about in conspiracy theories, and actually now everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's true. And when I heard about it in the 80s, people, don't be ridiculous. They wouldn't all have this big boys club where they have secret meetings and no one's allowed to know, and they pull strings and scratch each other's backs. Now you tell people, yeah, that's right, they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of course they do. They're people. They're people with money and power. Of course they're fucking scratching each other's backs and having a massive old boy network and stitching us up. Yes, it's obvious.
Yeah.
There's an official website, apparently.
Yeah.
Bilderberg Meetings, the official website. There you go.
What do they do? Just book a room in the local Hilton?
Must be, yeah. Just sit around. How have you been? How's your holiday? Yeah, that's nice, yeah.
Get the pink wafer biscuits out.
Yeah. Anyway, right, so Jeff's got a report on the latest chemtrails. How's it going, Jeff?
Yeah. Jim, was there any other ones that you want to hit from your list?
Again, these are, I find, fascinating things that actually are real conspiracies that came up in conspiracy theories but have been proved.
Mm-hmm.
In 1994, the US Air Force were experimenting with using pheromones as a weapon. This is from, documents retrieved through a Freedom of Information Act request.
In 1994?
In 1994, they wanted $7.5 million to see if dousing enemy combatants with female pheromones would cause a biological reaction in troops. This was flippantly known as the Gay Bomb Project.
Oh, brilliant.
The proposal suggested that effective soldiers would find their comrades sexually irresistible, and this potentially could lead to homosexual behaviour and render them less effective in combat.
Joking.
That was 1994.
Well, someone has the vision of, if we drop this gay bomb on all these people, they'll just rut each other to death in the field, won't they? It's not to turn them into homosexuals thinking that they might be less dangerous. It's so they shag the fucking shit out of each other. And as they walk across the fields, oh, look, there's Gary bumming that bloke over there.
Something about Monty Python's sketch for the world's funniest joke.
Yeah, I thought that. But surely the worst part about it is not only did someone come up with that idea, but somebody high up in the military has gone, that sounds reasonable. Here's a load of money. Go and make it happen.
That's nothing. You can look up what the CIA and other intelligence departments would do cooking up in the 50s and 60s to deal with Cuba. They were going to put thallium in Castro's shoes to slowly poison him so his beard would fall out to make him less credible. They were going to assassinate him with exploding cigars.
Yeah.
My favourite one was they had a plan to stage the second coming of Christ. They were going to use star shells and artificial fog banks on which they would project images of Jesus, who would say he was coming back and that Castro was evil and he should be overthrown. And they would have airplanes flying over, with actually loudspeakers broadcasting heavenly voices to back all this up. This was an actual plan. I mean, sometimes you start reading this stuff and kind of wacko sort of things they were cooking up. You really start to wonder what is possible, what isn't, what wouldn't they do,
Hang on, but was it the film Argo where they invented, that kind of wacky plan? That worked.
Well, that was the film crew to go and rescue the hostages, wasn't it?
Yeah, they decided that they were going to pretend that they were there to scout some areas for a science fiction film and made up the whole thing and got the press behind it in Hollywood and basically invented this film that didn't exist to get those people out of Iran during the revolution. So pretending that Jesus has come back, if they could pull it off, that's absolute genius because it would work.
Apparently, the main objections were actually just to get a submarines and aircraft in without the Cubans detecting them. That was the main objection to it.
Yeah, everything else, that's fine. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, there's lots online. The things they could do just for Cuba alone are just absolutely startling. They really are.
These are adults as well.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box. It's fine.
Andy, are there any others that you like?
The Matrix conspiracy?
Or the simulation one?
Yeah.
Is that a conspiracy or is it just a theory?
Well, it really depends on how you want to take it, I suppose. For those who don't know, the theory or conspiracy goes that all reality as we perceive it is actually a simulation. The thoughts being that at some point a supercomputer could be created which is so powerful it can run an entire simulation of the universe. And the theory goes that if it is possible to do that, then we have to be living in it. Because if you could make a simulation of the entire universe, odds are we are living in one of the simulations, not the one original one.
Yeah.
So it goes.
Yeah, it's something like if you accept the theory that in the future people could make computers good enough to simulate the past, then that means that if you accept that theory, then the odds are more likely that we're going to be in the simulation than we are actually the real people. See, now I was talking about that this week and thinking, if that's true, all these things like, ghosts and the Loch Ness Monster and all the weird stuff that everyone sees, maybe they're just glitches in the Matrix. And that's all you're seeing. Because we are actually a computer simulation.
Or it could be echoes on the C90 that we're actually living on at the moment from all the other simulations that we're recording over.
Yeah, it could be that, because those tapes are expensive, man.
They are.
Get a bit of tape over the bit of the back, and you'll be fine.
Oh, I want to keep this universe. Punch out them holes.
Yeah.
Well, what do we know from computer games? There's somebody going to write some kind of stupid mod, isn't there? To put something inappropriate into the game content.
Oh, no.
Like, for example, Donald Trump. So we are living in the simulation where somebody thought, what if we put this absolute lunatic in charge of everything? Let's see what happens.
Well, I think we're living in a simulation done by Ed Sheeran to simulate him being a pop star. There's my own explanation for it, that.
And a star in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Jesus.
God help me. God help me. Okay, well, I have nothing left on my list. I know that there's a million other conspiracy theories out there that we could dive into. We could spend hours talking about all of these. I feel we've only glimpsed on these, but I've had a thoroughly good couple of hours talking to you guys about this. So I think unless anyone's got something they are dying to say with conspiracy theories, I think we should wrap it up. Is anyone else, or forever hold your peace? I'll take that as a no then.
Yeah.
I've been told I should say no more.
Okay.
There is, of course, the famous conspiracy theory that the Shonky Lab isn't actually a podcast and it's just an excuse for us to get together and talk about shit.
What? That's crazy.
I know. 'Tis madness, sir.
I'm just locking these files up and they won't be available until 2240.
That's the time, not the year.
Yeah.
So 20 to 11 tomorrow. They'll be fine.
Cool. I know. Well, what I'm going to do, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me for this. Thank you to everyone who's joined us in the Mixler. If you are listening to the podcast of this, then please, next time this is on, pop along to the Facebook group. You'll see all the links there for the live feed, which is on mixler.com/Rogue2 Media, and you can join in all the fun down there. You're also able to Skype in as well, as Andy did earlier on today. So, I think we should go around the table and plug shit. So, Jim, would you like to plug your shit, which is good and stuff?
Yes, you can hear me every week on my own show, Hypnagoria, where, as we mentioned earlier, currently I'm doing a little series on Day of the Triffids in all its different incarnations.
Excellent stuff. Andy, since you're here, might as well plug away.
Well, you can catch me and your good self on the Band of Brothers podcast and also on the Grand Prix podcast. And you can catch me on Space Dock Jury with Mr. Lee Medcalf and the Reverend Peter Organ. All on the internet and iTunes. You know how to use Google. You're grown-ups.
Exactly, yeah. If they don't know how to find it, then what are they doing listening to this? How the hell? What's going on?
That's assuming, of course, I am actually a real person and not a figment of your imagination.
Oh dear.
Or
Lee.
of your Commodore 64 game.
Lee, have you got anything to plug at all?
I'm not really in anything,
Oh.
but I'm going to suggest people go and listen to the Blurry Photos podcast.
Ooh.
If you like the kind of thing that we've been talking about tonight, it's very funny. There's two American guys who talk about the conspiracies and paranormal stuff and all sorts of weird things, and they are not believers in the slightest. They're very entertaining. So Blurry Photos, go and check that out.
Excellent. And you can catch me on the Black Dog podcast, which has taken a 2-week hiatus due to holidays and stuff. You know, them damn families and holidays getting in the way of everything. Damn them. Anyway, so yeah, that's taken a 2-week holiday at the moment. You can pop along to blackdogpodcast.com. You can find all the details there. It's Mr. Lee Metcalf, Darren Barnard, Jim Moon, and myself talking about movies. And is there anything else? I don't think there's anything else. I can think of plugging. All the other plugs that I want to plug will be in the show notes. So,
we should mention anyone who's been listening to this is now on some sort of watch list as well.
Another one, yeah.
Another one.
Oh yes. Well, yeah. Hopefully, Donald Trump has got us on a watch list now. That'll make me happy. I'll be very happy for that. So, thank you guys for joining me with this. It's been excellent. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I've learned a lot once again, and hopefully some of the people out there listening to this have learned a lot too. Thank you to everyone in the Mixlr chat room, as I've said before. And I suppose it's just now is the time to say thank you very much. And please leave quietly. This is a residential area. I don't know if I believe it or not. It's one of them things where you can.
Wait. Hang on, are you saying you don't know if you believe whether the Earth is flat or not? That's what it sounded like you just said.
Well, I can play devil's advocate. Okay, fine. No, I think I totally believe in that. Go on, prove me wrong.
Okay, Elton, the Earth is not flat.
Oh well, you have certainly proved me wrong. Thank you very much.
Well, just viewing it from space for a start. Assuming, of course, we have actually been to space, but I'm sure we'll get onto that later.
Yeah, that's it gets like Russian dolls of conspiracy theories.
So, what are some of your favourite conspiracies that you guys have, Jim?
I quite like the Paul is dead conspiracy theory. This is from the old nation. Conspiracy theories used to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the Paul is dead?
This is Paul McCartney, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
According to the theory, Paul McCartney actually died in a car crash in 1966. And it was covered up by the other Beatles, hiring someone who looked exactly like him, sang like him, and had the same personality. But they kept dropping hints. For example, in the song Taxman, there's a line, some advice for those who die, meaning Paul. On Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, they have a big band intro and introduced a new member, Billy Shears, which is allegedly the name of the Paul McCartney-alike they hired. The cover of Abbey Road is symbolic. Lennon is in white as the preacher. Ringo is the mourner in black. George is wearing jeans as he's the grave digger. And Paul is wearing shoes because he's dead. He don't need no shoes. And he's walking out of step with the others. At the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, you can hear John say, Paul is dead. I miss him. I miss him. Oh, no, sorry, that's the backward message at the end of Sgt. Pepper's. At the end of Strawberry Fields, you can hear Lennon saying, I buried Paul, although Lennon claimed the phrase was actually cranberry sauce. And there's all sorts of things, like if you put the Sgt. Pepper album cover up in a mirror, you can see cryptic messages, and Paul's pose relates to something in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, symbolizing
Surely that's one of the easy things to check. That's for actually getting the mirror. Was nobody checked that?
Nobody has gatefolds anymore.
Well, someone else is probably. I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, nobody has gatefolds anymore, though, do they? It's all down to CDs, and they're microscopic compared to what they used to have.
Exactly. You see.
So what you're saying is they're covering it up. them.
Yes, the establishment.
Yeah. Oh, that's them. Establishment.
I like this conspiracy. Like you say, it is a fun one to have.
And it's unusual because usually the conspiracies are somebody's not dead, like Elvis or Adolf Hitler or anyone, any big famous person. So for them to have to say that they actually are dead is very unusual.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, I choose to believe it. True, Jim.
There is another two things. One on Sgt. Pepper's album. It looks like Paul McCartney's bass has been buried. I think it's surrounded by flowers at the very bottom of the album. And on the Abbey Road cover, Paul is he's holding a cigarette in his right hand, where he was a lefty. So, as far as I'm concerned, yes, Paul died many, many years ago.
It's all there, man.
But yeah, there was a lot of acid taken during this time as well. I'm sure of it, especially by some of the fans out there that want to. I don't know. Do they want to believe that Paul died and the conspiracy is there?
I don't know. It's just a weird one for people to want to believe. I mean, I understand why people want to believe Elvis faked his own death, why Jim Morrison faked his own death. I mean. You can understand that these people died young and people wanted more for them. And you have to think they're maybe still out there enjoying a quiet life. But what is it about Paul McCartney that people wish he was dead? I don't know. But, I mean, I think, conspiracies grow over time as well. And it's kind of maybe the Frog Chorus and Give My Regards to Broad Street have, compounded this theory. I don't know. It'd be interesting to chart it on some sort of a chart.
I would love to see Give My Regards to Broad Street. I've heard that is a terrible film.
I can get you a copy.
Oh, yes, please.
I've never seen it all. But I'm going to watch it, actually. It's the Excellence TV Cream, who are celebrating their 20 years of being around online. Have just released a commentary for it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to watch it, and I'll pretty much fall he's dead by the end of that as well. But there you go.
Yeah, I've heard about the ending as well, which I shan't give away because that would just spoil it for everyone. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I've heard about the ending, and I want to watch it because of that. Shall we say?
Just jump straight to the end. Just watch the last bit.
I know the ending. That's the problem. I want to see.
Oh, right, okay.
I want to see what they do before the end and see if it suits it or not. But yeah, I suppose people are normally they want to. The general public want to keep their rock stars, their film stars, all the other stars that they idolize. They want to keep them alive, don't they?
Clearly not.
Well, in the case of Elvis,
as recent history has shown, the British people are nuts.
Yeah.
So clearly, they want Paul McCartney dead for some reason.
I think Skype's gone wonky. Nuts. Just for the chat room and just for my peace of mind as well. My kids are draining my internet with their HD quality films on their iPads and small devices, and also the PlayStation as well. And yeah, so me trying to stream this and record this as well, it's having quite the impact on everything that I'm doing. So I live in the sticks. We don't have mega uber fiber optic internet out here. We just have copper wire and a bloke down there just with a turning wheel trying to get things going, and 50p.
You need to put more hamsters on it.
I
More
would-
hamsters on the wheel.
I would love to have more hamsters.
More cowbell.
Yeah, so sorry about that. We should be all right now, so fingers crossed. Martin, I have sent them to bed. They are in their bed. That's where they are streaming their bloody movies from. The problem is, I had a 14-year-old 14 years ago, and now he has a PlayStation in his room, and he's playing games and talking to his mate on it. And my daughter is
Is that your PlayStation that wasn't going to go upstairs?
That's the one, yeah. That was
That's
the one
yeah.
that you can have it upstairs for a week and then it comes back down. Oh, yeah, okay. And it came down for a day and then went straight back up. And then they wonder why I blow my top all the time. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so we should be back in the room. So, where were we? We was on Paul McCartney, weren't we? And Elvis and such likes.
Elvis isn't dead, but Paul McCartney is dead.
Are you a
That's
believer of
That's
the
what we
Elvis?
established. What, that he's not dead?
Yeah. How old would he be now if he hadn't or it didn't die? How old is he then?
Elvis is
To
eternal,
Google.
baby.
'Cause he's got to be getting near the point where he's going to be popping off this coil, really, isn't he?
I think Mr. Martin Thompson had the answer to this. He said Elvis would have been 82 this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice mathematics. Damn, I missed it. Oh, that was that was when I was sorting out stuff upstairs. Flipping out. Thank goodness for the chat room.
One of my favourite conspiracies is anything that comes out of the mouth of David Icke.
Well, that's pretty much all of them.
Yeah. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But particularly the reptiles.
I'll say, what's it? Is the greatest secret ever told? Is that the? I read one of his books, had out the library, and I was just rolling around on the floor while I was reading it, because it was kind of every conspiracy I'd ever heard of, all woven together into one huge tapestry of madness. and the bit that always sticks in my mind is when he's talking about the reptoids, and he says, people ask me, what are they? Are they A, aliens? Are they B, from another dimension? Are they C, time travelers? Or are they D, astral vampires? The answer is a bit of all of them. It's like, bang, nailed it.
Well, thank you very much, David.
So what is it? These reptilians, shape-shifting reptilians, live underground and are plotting against us all. Those of us which they have not replaced.
I
So
thought
the royal family apparently are lizards.
Yeah, I thought they were in key positions of power across across the world, across the flat Earth.
Well, Nigel Farage, if somebody said he was a lizard, that, if anything, backs up David Icke's case.
He's not in a position of power, is he? He's just a fool that
Well,
I
got
don't know.
people to listen.
It's caused a lot of havoc.
yeah,
Of,
he's done a lot for someone who's not in a position of any power.
Yeah.
But, I mean, things. But my take on the like reptiles thing is kind of, I can see there is a sort of weird and unintentional, I would say, kind of symbolic truth to it. Because, like, the human brain is made up in like layers, and there's the primitive reptile brain, and that's where all the violent and antisocial instincts come from. It's kind of, if you think there's, people who go through family connections and money, quite demonstrably have been gaming the system for years, and they act on the lowest possible principles. Symbolically, they are acting on reptilian impulses. So that's as far as the censors I could go with Ike.
So you're saying that he's just taking it really literally?
Well, kind of. I mean, I think conspiracy theories, they are kind of They're interesting because they reflect people's sort of fears and concerns, and the more wacky they get, the more it's kind of, you can kind of apply some psychology to them and see, the underlying kind of mechanisms that are driving the belief and driving the appeal, indeed, of why people like conspiracy theories. I mean, people want to believe we're being oppressed by alien reptiles because culturally we've had 50, 60, well, even more years of science fiction films about aliens coming and doing just that. And, we all want to be in Star Wars. We all want to be in the rebellion and fight the evil alien empire, don't we?
I think in David Icke's case, it's a lack of underlying mechanisms that's caused the spread of this.
I mean, I see him as a guy, he had a complete breakdown, and he's a kind of a proof of something like G.K. Chesterton said. He said the problem is when people stop believing God, they don't just believe in nothing; they literally start believing in everything. And kind of Icke is kind of he had some sort of breakdown, and then he's kind of literally everything he's read must be true, and he started.
But then I sat down today to play it. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give it a whirl. It's bloody hard. It's miles harder than what I remember it being. It was, I don't remember it being like that whatsoever. So,
back in day when games were proper games, not like they are now.
Yeah, proper hard games as well. So,
no saves as well.
You only had 3 lives, and that were it.
Yeah, no saves, 3 lives. That's it. Once you're dead, back to the beginning. I was trying to do cheat codes on it as well, and it wasn't working. I was trying to do the up, down, and it wasn't having it. So, no, not one bit, you bastard. Anyway, I think we should dive into some conspiracies at least. I have just to mention, I have a can of beer celebrating the 100th episode of Shonky Lab. So I'm going to give myself a little round of applause there for reaching 100. Clap. Yeah. It's bonkers. It's taken far too long to get to this point, but them's the breaks, I'm sure. I think I had about a year off at one point as well. So
it's quality, not quantity.
Yeah, that's right. Screw them losers that say quantity.
Yeah. Not like some other podcasts.
Are you pointing a finger?
We'll just do a couple of episodes about Batman and then we'll move on. Yeah.
I'm still waiting for more Judge Dredd, but I'm not gonna moan. So, conspiracies.
Yes.
I'm sure we all like a conspiracy, don't we?
I'm not as fond of them as I used to be, I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But before we touch on it, that's the way conspiracy theories have changed, particularly in the last few years.
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's the norm now. It's like that's the place to go first. It used to be that it was just, a handful of weirdos. But now with the way that you can communicate so easily, it's almost as if everything is a conspiracy first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. It's also the way it's kind of in certain political circles, mainly the right in America, conspiracy theories are now the norm.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, it happens over here with the British tabloid press, of that they're always touting scare stories that are now verging on conspiracy theories.
Yeah, everything has an underlying tone to it, though, doesn't it?
Mm.
Everything. It doesn't matter who died, what died, how something got destroyed, someone ripped off someone was photographing someone else. It's all conspiracy theories, right down to the flowers. And it doesn't matter what type of life you have, where you get this thought from. There's always someone on the internet turning it around and saying, yeah, what about this? What about that? Which can be quite fun in most instances. If it's harmless, I feel there's no problems with that whatsoever. But some of it can get fucking really crazy to the point. I'll give you one, for example. We don't have to hit on this now, but the flat earth theory.
Hey, that's one of my favourite ones.
Oh, is it?
Because I work in a department whose job it is to map the height of the UK. We produce height models, and it's really hard. So we're trying desperately to get our managers to sign up to the Flat Earth Society so that we can just turn around and say, it's all flat.
Yeah, I think in the flat Earth theory there are still mountains.
Oh, boo.
From what I can work out, the Earth is a disc, and around the edge of the disc are mountains and frozen, like, ice mountains, stopping everything from falling off the edge. A bit like when you have a Yorkshire pie and all the food goes in the middle. And the Earth and all the people and the water around there, they are the food that goes in the middle, and the mountains are the crust of the Yorkshire pie that goes around the edge. Hello everyone, welcome back to Shonky Lab. I'm Elton, and this is the show where we pick a topic and talk about it. And this week I am joined by Mr. Lee Harvey.
Hello.
And Mr. Jim Moon.
Hello, folks.
And we've got conspiracies on the table today. Lots and lots of conspiracies. I've also got a side topic as well. I don't know if the people in the chat want to play along with this. Who would play you in a film? Just going to put that out there for now. I'm wondering if they'll actually join in with that or not. I don't know. I reckon I'd end up with Danny Dyer or someone like that playing me. I'd want Leo. I'd end up with Danny. That's the way I feel that things would go for me, which is I'd take him. I don't mind Danny Dyer. I've got no problems with him. I know a lot of people fucking hate him, but there we go. So, how are you, gentlemen? Anyway,
I'm good.
Good. Been up to much?
Getting slightly nervous after doing research for this show.
Is that due to all the websites you've been going on?
It's due to what we've been reading on the websites.
Oh, God.
Something after a while, you start delving into this stuff. You start going, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah, it does get a little bit like that. I was watching certain things, which I won't speak about just now, but I was watching certain videos on YouTube, because YouTube is your friend in this subject, I feel. And some of the moments I caught myself going, what if? Hang on a minute. And then I had to shake myself and go, no, it's nothing to do with me. No, I don't want to go down there. So
You don't want to follow that rabbit down that hole.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Oh, incidentally, Jim, I was listening to your Day of the Triffids episode today, and bravo, that I'm hooked on that already. I love that, so I'm looking forward to more of that coming out.
Yeah, so another bit this weekend, and then the weekend after next. There's a bit of a break for a story due to my schedule getting mucked up by people inconsiderately dying. But then there'll be a fourth one as well, because I'm just reading the sequel novel at the minute, Night of the Triffids.
Oh, nice. So we've got a
So
nice
there will
collection.
Yes, it should have been a three-part because Triffids have 3 legs, but it turned into 4. But you know,
This isn't like your Batman 2-parter, is it?
It got a bit. I expected this would be several parters covering the movie and 2 TV series and a sequel. But so I wanted it for 3, but it got to 4 because I talked so much about the original novel.
You need to have a separate podcast which is just entirely devoted to people who have died recently.
Well, that will be
the
obituary show.
Yeah, then it won't mess up your schedule.
Mm.
Yeah, nice. And what about you, Lee? What have you been up to? You been up to much?
I'm good. I'm all right. Yeah. Just working and recently got back into playing war games for the first time for a while, so that was nice. Playing the new Warhammer 40,000 that just came out recently,
Yeah.
which I'm sure some of our listeners will know about. And as I've done no research for this show whatsoever, I'm not worried in the slightest. Ignorance is bliss, yeah.
Yeah, ignorance can be bliss. I pulled a Mega Drive down from my loft this week, and I was showing my daughter Sonic 2 on that. And do you know what? She loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was nice and friendly and fun and colourful, and she really liked it. She hasn't really been back on it since, but she enjoyed them 20 minutes that she was actually playing it.